The boardwalk is flooded with locals and tourists alike, the smell of hot dogs and ice cream floating above the crowd. Even as the sun sets over the immense Ferris wheel, the people show no sign of turning in for the night. ZARINA looks up at her father as they walk. His strides are so much longer than hers, and she can feel her grip on his oversized hand start to slip. "Dad, slow down." They've been there all day. The ache in her legs is a dull, unending moan. Her mother struggles to keep up, weaving around bright-faced families who seem determined to bump shoulders with her. She puts a hand on his shoulder. "Maybe we should call it a day." Father's stride doesn't break. "Mona, we're celebrating our nation's independence. Look at these people. We're not missing the fireworks." This cheerful man pulling ZARINA through the waves of people is a far cry from the man she found sitting at the dining table that morning. Sitting still, silent, holding hands with Mother, reading the newspaper. They find a spot on the beach and watch as the sky explodes in flashes of color and light. ZARINA hears the oohs and ahs from the families surrounding her. The fair-haired boy standing on the beach towel next to her waves his flag in excitement. Her father is all smiles, as if he forgot the article that upset him so much that morning. ZARINA had only caught a glimpse of the headline, but she could still see it clearly in her mind's eye. Anti-Arab hate crimes on the rise. Standing on that dark beach, ZARINA can only watch as her father watches the fireworks, the dazzling lights fading in his sparkling eyes. The bus rumbles along Metropolitan Avenue, and the old cemetery comes into view through the broad speckled windows. Her father is in the driver's seat, his eyes fixed on the road. He only breaks his gaze when he makes his stops and says bye to the disembarking passengers. But he doesn't look back at her. Not once. Not since she told him what happened. Some part of her thought there was a chance he would be proud. She stood up for herself. She stared into the face of racism and punched her in the mouth. Just one hit, but it was worth it. Bullies like Lindsay need to be dealt with. Otherwise, they win. Her father pulls into the next stop, hitting the brakes a little harder, giving the passengers a jolt. At last, he looks back at her as she stands behind the yellow line. "My grandfather told me something when I was a little boy in Beirut. He told me it's better to have 1,000 enemies outside your door than to let even one of them in. Do you understand me? If you allow someone like Lindsay to get in here," he points at his head, "or in here," his heart, "that is how they win." People get off. People get on. They all wait patiently to get back on the road. Don't forget this, ZARINA. Everyone deserves forgiveness. And you deserve peace. As far as he's concerned, the conversation is over. He looks back at the road in front of him. His eyes do not stray again, not until he pulls up next to the familiar block of apartments and says goodbye to his daughter's back. Karina, welcome home. She freezes at the sound of that name coming from her father's mouth. He's at the dining table, holding a letter from one of her teachers. It was supposed to be a new start at a new school, a new identity. Not ZARINA from Lebanon, but Karina from somewhere. She had done everything she could to keep Karina a secret. She never brought friends home to meet her parents. She added extra security to her phone and kept her calls quiet. But there's no controlling the mail. Her mother is in the kitchen, slicing marinated chicken with a large knife, staring right at her. "I understand why you wanted to dye your hair now." She had chosen her new hair color carefully, studying her face in the mirror to see which color brightened her complexion. This is worse than when I hit Lindsay. She was a racist bully who had it coming. This is me, denying who I am, pretending to be like them. Her parents stare at her, seeing right through her. She's never felt so exposed, laid bare in her shame. She can't restrain the shiver running up and down her body. And then, a smile. A knowing look. This is about what happened with that girl from your old school, isn't it? She tries to find an answer. She stammers, her words stumbling out of the gate. It's okay. If you want to be Karina, you can be Karina. We'll respect it. Your hair looks great, by the way. Her mother drops the chicken in the pan. Dinner will be a while longer. Come in. Stay a while. Karina drops her coat and runs for her room, locking the door behind her. She catches a glimpse of herself in the mirror and runs her fingers through her dirty blonde hair, wishing more than ever to have her natural color back. It won't be him. Please, don't let it be him. She was expecting it to be like the movies. A long, sterile corridor leading to a freezing cold room of metallic drawers, his body on a slab. No, it won't be him. She looks around the waiting room. Warm, inviting, well lit. A hole in the drywall crudely patched over. The illusion of comfort. She wants to scream. She will not be taken to her father's body. Instead, she and her mother would be shown photographs of identifying features on his body, but not his face. The attendant made it clear the photos would not be graphic, but they wouldn't be able to see his face. It could be anybody's face. Her mother makes space on the couch as the attendant sits next to them. ZARINA can't hear a word of the attendant's preamble. All she can hear is blood rushing past her ears. All she can see are the white sheets of photo paper in the attendant's hands. The room gets colder with each passing moment. She tells herself to breathe. At last, the attendant turns the first photo face up. ZARINA's mother gasps. It's all she needs to hear. The photos are cruel in their honesty. The wedding band on his hand. The old scar on his leg where he had a varicose vein removed. Her mother slumps back on the couch, fainted. The ground falls out beneath them. The walls collapse into dust. The world has come to an end. It was 2 years ago to the day that a gang member named Clark Stevenson pushed Ahmed Kassir into oncoming traffic, killing him instantly. According to eyewitnesses, Ahmed, Dad, did nothing to provoke this attack. He was minding his business, waiting to cross the street, when Clark started yelling at him, pushing him out into the street just as a sedan sped by. Clark also assaulted several bystanders who tried to restrain him as they waited for police to arrive on the scene. Clark refused to answer questions while in custody, but his gang was known to commit racially motivated acts of violence. ZARINA knows all of this the first day of Clark's trial. And when the trial reaches its end, and the jury declares Clark guilty on all charges, this knowledge becomes proven fact. But the end of the trial means the beginning of the sentencing hearing, and ZARINA knows her work is just beginning. She stands at a podium in the courtroom, looking down at a mess of wrinkled papers she calls a victim statement. She can only look down at her statement. Not at the cold-eyed judge, and certainly not at the defendant's box. At no point in the trial was she able to look there. She asks for a life sentence without parole. There is no redemption for Clark, she says, and a life behind bars is a small price to pay for destroying her family forever. No mercy, no forgiveness. In the blink of an eye, she is sitting in her car in the courthouse parking lot, shoulders shuddering, chest heaving. A life sentence. In most other states, he'd get the death penalty, a lethal dose of chemicals. A life for a life. Dad always said New York was the most progressive state in the country. Look where it got him. A life sentence would have to do. It won't be long now. The long night spent staring at the ceiling will come to an end. Peace will return. And Clark will never know freedom again. ZARINA adjusts her sunglasses. Her senses are overwhelmed. The screaming sun overhead, the roar of cars on the street, the smell of the officer's aftershave. She double-checks her purse to make sure the snatcher didn't take anything. He's sitting on the curb now, a paramedic cleaning his face. He grabbed my purse, I chased after him, he tripped on the sidewalk and fell. That was her story, and the officer didn't question it. It was only that morning that ZARINA got the news about Clark's sentence. 20 years, with the possibility of parole after 10. 10 years. The state of New York decided her father's life was worth just 10 years. The purse snatcher lets out a cry as the paramedic bandages his nose. The little rat got off easy. ZARINA can't hide the disdain on her face. The officer puts his notepad in his pocket. Ma'am, it's all right. I would be angry too. But she can't stop staring at the little rat sitting on the curb, pressing gauze into his nose. Her eye twitches. He would have had a lot worse than a bloody nose if this officer hadn't been walking his beat. Brooklyn used to be her home. But it's been years since she felt that way. Years of feeling angry and alone. The officer asks if ZARINA would like to press charges. She answers without hesitation. ZARINA leans forward in her seat and removes her notes from her carry-on. She discreetly sets the photographs aside and puts them back in her bag. Too graphic for Coach. She doesn't know how a transfer from New York to Nebraska was authorized. Her research found that Clark Stevenson was born in Lincoln and still had family there. The irony of Clark wanting to be close to his family leaves an acidic taste in her mouth. The plane hits turbulence and her cup of soda water nearly spills. Her chest tightens, her breath lodging itself in her throat. Perhaps it's a sign. How hard would it be to go straight to the ticket counter in Omaha and get a seat on the next flight back to New York? Cancel the interview with Clark. Axe the project. The thought has an iron grip, and ZARINA feels like a scared teenager again. The one who tried changing her identity to win over her classmates. The one who asked her guidance counselor if someone like her could ever be a documentary filmmaker. She looks down at her notes and sees a photocopy of Clark's mugshot, his eyes staring up at her. She needs to do this, to ask him why, to find some peace. The turbulence eases, and ZARINA's chest relaxes. Breathing comes a little easier. But somewhere in the back of her mind, she can't help but brace herself for more turbulence, for what awaits her at Hellshire Penitentiary.